We continue our story with Sideswipe and Grimlock approaching Arachnid's ship. Both of them are a little cautious, but again, Sideswipe is more than confident they could use this to their advantage, get an edge over these Decepticons, and maybe, just maybe, find a way to take down Nova Prime. And this is where Arachnid comes out. She's like, two Autobots approaching a Decepticon ship. How might I end your lives today? To which this is where Grimlock and Sasay simply states, we'll make this quick. And they both rush her. Now, Arachnid is immediately on the defensive here. And keep in mind, Sideswipe's not using his, super speed or anything. He's actually just using his natural speed. While Grimlock is kind of playing the, I guess you could say, the muscle. So Arachnid goes into her spider form and does dodge around their basic attacks, their swings, their punches. But does she really realize she's being set up? This is where Arachnid actually goes for a weapon, and Sideswipe says, all right, Grimlock, now. And he actually uses his flamethrower to burn the webbing, and Arachnid has no choice but to really jump back. But she jumps back and is actually in the sword swing radius of Grimlock. So his sword comes down, and I mean it comes down with some ruthless and aggressive speed. And he says, die. And Arachnid has no choice but to dodge it. And this is where it creates a sort of like crater, or even like, smacks into the ground, causing like a huge amount of force. She's like, dear God, what the heck is that thing? And this is where she thinks she's getting away, because, there's now a whole bunch of debris and smoke. But this is where Grimlock's hands reach out and grabs her. Like, kind of similar to Soundwave, but again, keep in mind, he's much bigger. He's essentially like a Hulk compared to the rest of the Decepticons and Autobots, obviously. And he pretty much has her, and does the same thing Rhino did to Miles. He grabs him, smacks her on the ground, kicks her, and then hits her with one of these. Yeah, Arachnid's, yeah, she's down for that one. That was a lot of force in such a one combo motion. She got hit with the 3-piece slam combo. And so Sideswipe puts his foot on her and is contemplating on enter, to which Arachnid's like, wait, perhaps I can help you. You guys don't seem like your traditional Autobots anyway. Maybe we can make a deal. To which Sideswipe's like, all right, here's the deal. You work with us, and we don't kill you. To which Arachnid's like, deal. Oh, the heck. Okay, so I'm Arachnid, by the way, and you are? To which Sideswipe introduces himself and Grimlock. And RC, by the way, who also would have been here with Jack at this time, tells her partner to kind of stay low. And she observes the entire thing and is a little bit taken aback when they both just willingly follow Arachnid into her ship. And this is where Grimlock actually looks at the collection she has, and he's not really moved or fazed by it. I mean, none of these are dinosaurs, right? They're all alien creatures, so he really doesn't have that kind of sense of, he kind of hates her or anything, because, he really doesn't really have a reason to. And this is where Arachnid says, so, what are you guys looking for? To which this is where Sideswipe notes anything to give them the edge. So Arachnid activates her scanners and simply states, well, considering the fact that this planet likely does have some Decepticon technology still left on here, it's very possible you guys will find whatever you're looking for. And what are you looking for, Muscles? And Grimlock simply states, strength. More strength. A simple but. I like that. Perhaps you will become the strongest beast, or strongest being, in this entire universe. And this is where her scanners pick up on the Harbinger. And we're going to say it's the second half, as I do have plans for the first half as well. So that'll be, I guess you could say possibly in the next part, or next part down the line. And this is where Sideswipe simply states, Decepticon ship, and he begins to muse Arachnid's computer after seeing her how she uses it. He pretty much uses it like quite casually. And this is where he states, yeah. Oh yeah. This ought to be useful. To which Arachnid's like, great, so how do you expect me to get there? To which Grimlock turns into his T-Rex form and simply states, get on. To which she's like, oh, such a gentleman. And so hops on Grimlock's back as they pretty much transform, or Sideswipe transforms and simply drives off. Well, I guess you say drives off at a speed where Grimlock can pretty much keep up, and he can keep an eye on Arachnid. And to which this is where Arachnid simply states, So, this is where I am now, part of a team of rebels. Can't say I don't like it. It's actually quite fun. And this is where RC, now seeing them drive off, begins to relay the information to them back at base. However, there is an explosion as well. Arachnid ship was set to explode so that no one could find them. But back at the Autobot base, RC has already relayed that information and simply states to Optimus what's happening. To which this is where Optimus simply looks at Goldbug Prime and simply asks, "Did you know of your friends or your team's intentions?" To which Goldbug simply sighs and begins to explain that Sideswipe kind of blames him for everything, or he doesn't think he's worthy to really lead. And I can't say I don't blame him. I'm a scout, or at least I was a scout until I became a prime. Man, it's just so much right now. To which Optimus simply puts his hand on his shoulder and simply states he understands. Right now, you have to be a leader. You have to reach out to your team, make them see reason. Otherwise, this division could harm us in the near future. To which he's like, I know, but I'm not sure if anyone will listen. To which Wheeljack simply states, well, Grimlock's usually not acting like this. He's normally calm, or, well, at least a bit more childish, but he's acting like an actual warrior. Not saying it's a bad thing, but it's kind of scary. To which Ratchet simply states, well, if they have found anything from the Harbinger, we could at least convince them to at least give us some of the supplies, so that way we can at least enhance our own technology or gain a different edge over the Decepticons. To which Wheeljack is like, I miss that voice of yours. To which Ratchet's like, what? And Wheeljack goes like, what? Huh? Anyway, we should actually go after them. So this is where RC meets up with Goldbug Prime and Optimus, and they both go to the Harbinger. And this is where they actually find Arachnid, Sideswipe, and Grimlock. And let's say Team Prime actually gets there before Team Swipe over here. Or before Team Devestation, if you will. And, well, this is where everyone kind of meets. Where Goldbug's like, Sideswipe, what's going on? What are you doing? To which Sideswipe says, look, I'm taking charge here. Whether you like it or not, I already got a team. And I don't need some yellow belly pretend to be Autobots to try and be the new leader. To which Goldbug is a little hurt by this. But he's like, I don't want to fight you. But you can't just go around looking for revenge or trying to just take the Decepticons on your own. To which Sideswipe was like, that says a lot coming from you, considering the fact that you always hid during battle, always using your tactics to avoid everything. To which Goldbug simply is like, it's pointless. To which Optimus simply, steps in front of him. Sideswipe, we would recommend that you at least work with us to help us take down the Decepticons. I understand I'm not your Optimus. To which he says, you know what? That's actually a good point. You're not my Optimus. Grimlock, take him. And this is where Grimlock simply charges in and goes after Optimus. However, Optimus utilizes his vehicle mode to actually drive backwards, avoiding the first swing. However, as Grimlock proceeds, Optimus then just kind of swerves around him and then trips him over. However, this is where Grimlock actually shows why he's a lot more warrior-like. His intelligence. He's seen enough battle, he's seen enough experiences with Optimus and the rest of them to know a tactic. And so when Optimus goes to ram him, Grimlock slams his fist right into the ground, causing Optimus to jump up, or at least fly up in the air, and he has no choice but to transform, but he gets cratered right through the air when Grimlock lands a solid blow on his chest, cracking his windshield, or his chest windows, mind you. And so Grimlock rushes at him as Optimus Prime pulls out his blasters and begins to shoot him. Meanwhile, RC and Arachnid engage each other, as usual, with their usual dialogue, with her simply stating, it's kind of funny, losing two partners in such a short span of time. Tailgates extinguished by me, and Cliff Jumper. It's a shame. Never got to meet him or kill him, as a matter of fact. So, how about I reignite you or reunite you with your partners, RC? And obviously that makes RC turn to a crash out, and well, they get right to work. Meanwhile, Goldbug is trying to de-escalate the situation with Sideswipe. But Sideswipe simply takes out his blades and simply states, look, you get one chance, B. Leave. Go back to base. Go back to wherever you want to go. And let me and my team actually do what needs to be done. To which Goldbug is like, and what's that? Take down the Decepticons? Look for a way to make Grimlock your super weapon? Does he even want that? To which Sideswipe states he wants strength. He wants revenge. Don't you get that? To which this is where Goldbug is like, look, I get it, I do. But we can get this together. We can do this together. We can end Nova Prime together. To which Sideswipe is like, what? End him with you? And this is where Sideswipe, actually unleashes his super speed and blitzes Bumblebee, kicking him right to the ground. He then is about to stab him, but this is where Goldbug actually utilizes his, combat intelligence, or his every experience with Optimus, transforms to his vehicle mode and sweeping Sideswipe under his legs. However, Sideswipe transforms and then rams Bumblebee through the side of his own door. And keep in mind, he's a lot faster. However, Goldbug transforms and flips him off of him. But this is where Sideswipe again transforms and then actually uses his swords to slash at Goldbug with, well, his super speed and combination. This does allow him to get some lethal cuts on Goldbug. And he simply states, you can just stay down. You're not built for this. Not some leader, not some warrior. You're a scout. Whether you like it or not. You were never a warrior. You were never out on the battlefield with me, Jazz, and Optimus. You were always the coward, B. And again, I respected the fact that you did your position. But being a prime, it's not in you. And I know good and well that Optimus right now made the biggest mistake of his life. To which this is where Goldbug feels a surge of something. Whether it be anger, guilt, and maybe a little bit of him contemplating whether or not he was right or whether or not Sideswipe is right. He wants to prove him wrong. He wants to show that he can be a good leader, even if he doubts it. And this is where B, or Goldbug, points his hands at him, and his hand turns into a stinger. And he blasts his Sideswipe right off his feet and right into the dirt. He then turns to Grimlock, who now has Optimus by his throat and is about to, well, Hulk smash this man, or turn this man into Loki. And this is where he shoots Grimlock in the back, bringing him down to one knee. And he tells them, enough. Please, enough. I don't want this fight. We've been friends for how long? I understand. I'm a scout. All right, I get it. I was a scout. I was always the one to survey everything and report it back, then come back to base. I get that. I'm not Optimus. And I'm not trying to be Optimus either, Sideswipe. But right now, I want my team. Even if you brought the psychotic spider lady onto our side, great. You got a new ally for us. But right now, we have so much. We can end this together. We don't even know if Nova Prime even followed us. Did you even think of that? So what Sideswipe does kind of rub the back of his head as he gets up, because again, that sting did hurt. And he's like, I guess I didn't. To which this is where B turns his hand back to normal and extends his hand to Sideswipe. I want you all to get revenge. I want revenge the same as you. But we have to be able to do this together. Otherwise, look at us. Tearing each other apart. We all could use each other. We all need each other. Doesn't that mean something to you? To which Sideswipe, after a while, takes B's hand. Or takes Goldbug's hand. And simply says, all right then, Bug, what's your plan? To which this is where Goldbug simply states, let's use the Harbinger. We got all the Decepticon technology we need, and, well, she might know how it works. To which RC's like, you can't be serious. We're not allowing Arachnid to join us, right? To which Arachnid's like, what's wrong, RC? Not joining Team Prime. I'm with my new friends, after all. To which, this is where Grimlock finally gets up and apologizes to Optimus. To which Optimus is like, I think I kind of understand why Megatron is scared of you. Or how you put that kind of fear into Megatron. Glad to know you're on our side, old friend. Or my new friend, I should say. To which Grimlock feels a bit happier and actually hugs Optimus. But this is where we pan over to the Decepticon warship. And Megatron and Nova Prime are in the middle of a conversation where he's like, okay, all right. And keep in mind, Nova's Prime injury looks exactly like this. Like, he's missing half his chest, half his face, and half his shoulder because of the damage that Optimus did with the Matrix. And he simply does, after explaining everything and how he kind of came to power, why his Megatron was worthy, he feels like Prime Megatron would be a worthy apprentice to him. To which Megatron's like, oh, really? An apprentice? And what, pray tell, do I need to learn from you? To which Nova Prime actually utilizes the very bit of energy from the dead universe, from his own master, Devoid, and this is where it actually converts Megatron's missing hand into the Liege Maximal hand. I'm going to say that this is the arm that he kind of gets just to kind of set the tone for the story. So with Megatron not having a fusion cannon, he does have this arm, meaning Megatron's going to have to be a bit more smarter in his endeavors now. To which he's like, very well, we will see to it that you are repaired. And this is where Nova Prime simply bows and nods his head and is escorted into the medical chamber by the rest of the Decepticons. And he simply states his troops are his to command. To which Thundercracker, Skywarp, Blitzwing, and the Stunticons all simply bow to Megatron along with his private army. And this is where Starscream simply states, well, new allies, new seekers, I'm guessing these new ones are going to be quite vital, Lord Megatron? To which Megatron simply states, of course they will be. And so, he simply states, make yourselves acquainted with my warship. And this is where Megatron and Starscream do talk. So, are you trusting him, Lord Megatron? To which Megatron simply laughs and says, oh, Starscream, how much do you know of me? A lot, actually. You kind of beat me repeatedly. Well, don't risk another one. And he simply states something very simple. He is not trusting Nova Prime. Be sure that you summon our medical officer here to Earth, do you? To which Starscream simply nods and states, why, of course, Lord Megatron. And this is where Soundwave shows Megatron the footage or the Autobots battling against each other and then coming to an agreement amongst the Harbinger, which he says, the Harbinger. Interesting. You there. To which Skywarp simply stands up. Yes, sir. Who are you? My name is Skywarp, sir. I am a seeker from my dimension, and I have the ability to teleport. To which Megatron goes, ooh, really? Teleportation? Then I want you to teleport inside this Harbinger, confiscate anything that you would find of use, and bring it back to me. Failure isn't an option. To which Skywarp teleports, and Megatron's like, oh, he was actually telling the truth. These Decepticons might be more useful than my own. Meanwhile, back at the Harbinger, everything's kind of settled here, with Goldbug finally being able to get a reins, or at least being able to fully, get Sideswipe and Grimlock to understand that he wants them to be stronger. He really does. But they all have to do this together. All of us. To which RC isn't really too welcome with the idea of working with Arachnid. But here's the thing. Arachnid is smart about this. And while she's not a good person or a good Cybertronian in any way, she understands right now these guys are extremely powerful and dangerous. And she's not going to be stupid enough to betray them anytime soon. So this is where Grimlock kind of goes back into his depressed state and states he misses his friends. To which Sideswipe's like, yeah, I know, big guy. But who knows? Maybe we can find some way to get them back or make you new ones. To which RC is like, really? You're going to make more Dinobots? Is that really a good idea? To which this is where Goldbug simply interjects and states that they actually had 5. Grimlock was the leader of them, and has always been one of his most trusted allies since then. To which Grimlock simply states, yeah, me good. Me like to destroy. To which RC is like, and apparently not a big one on speech either. To which this is where Sideswipe is like, yeah, he's actually had moments where he's actually been smart enough to create things, so maybe we can give him a better mindset as well with the information in the Harbinger. However, this is where a loud boom goes off inside the Harbinger, and Skywarp and Bumblebee, who had snuck in during the confrontation, are pretty much going at it. Bumblebee uppercuts Skywarp right through the entirety of the lab area, and this is where he grabs the immobilizer and tries to paralyze Bumblebee. However, Bumblebee, utilizing his quick thinking, uses a lab table to pretty much block the immobilizer and closes his distance, and then smacks it on the top of Skywarp's head. However, he teleports and is about to shoot B from the back with his null rays full force. However, this is where he's shot in the back by Sideswipe, telling him to leave his friends alone. And this is where Sideswipe actually begins to basically bombard Skywarp with every bit of firepower. And he tells him, okay, big guy, he's all yours. And Grimlock comes flying in with, well, basically this position right here. And we obviously know Skywarp got decked. Yeah, pretty hard. However, Skywarp crashes into 3 of the protoforms, causing them to fall on him. And this is where he's like, well, this ought to be useful. So he grabs the immobilizer, which is basically still, oh, he still has the immobilizer in his hand, and teleports out of there. To which Grimlock's like, no, he got away. And to which Optimus is like, don't worry, old friend. Don't worry, my friend. We will get him back soon. But right now, we need to celebrate with what we have. Everything in the Harbinger right now is ours. To which Sideswipe is like, new protoforms, huh? This could actually be helpful. Meanwhile, back on the Decepticon warship, Megatron is actually impressed by Skywarp's, I guess you can say, efforts. He actually got multiple things. The 3 protoforms, undamaged, or at least slightly damaged, but again, they can work around that. And then the immobilizer, to which Starscream states, well, Megatron, these troops seem more useful than intended. To which Skywarp says, well, yeah, duh, probably better than you. To which Megatron is like, as he, holding the immobilizer, he's like, that is indeed a good point. See to it that you improve yourself, Starscream. You could learn a thing or two from Skywarp over here. To which Starscream kind of just grits his teeth like, of course, Lord Megatron. And simply walks off with the Viacons carrying the protoforms. So this is where we head back to Autobot Outpost Omega. And we hear Grimlock actually annoying Ratchet. Are they ready? No. Are they ready? No. How about now? No. How about now? No. To which Grimlock then goes into his T-Rex form. How about now? To which Ratchet says, oh my god, gosh, darn it. Could you please get your teammate away from me? We could really use the space right now. To which Wheeljack's like, well, technically, he's also your child, too. To which Ratchet is like, what? To which Wheeljack's like, oh, yeah, sorry, wrong Ratchet. To which Ratchet's kind of like, okay, how about you explain the dynamic between your Ratchet and you? Like, because clearly I must be missing something. To which Wheeljack says, he was my greatest friend, my partner. We used to make things together that were capable of taking down combiners. And then, we made the Dinobots. So he says, wait, so Grimlock's technically he's technically my kid in a way. But again, he's the kid that can pretty much beat up its parent and throw them into the sun if he wanted to. Yeah, so he's pretty powerful. I'll give you that. To which Ratchet's like, okay, so we're just basically doing what we did back in my dimension. Pause. And this is where Ratchet and Wheeljack actually do work a lot more fluidly, with him being a lot more happy. And you actually hear Wheeljack coming, and Ratchet's like, oh no, I really have to deal with a mad scientist, don't I? To which this is where Jack and Miko kind of just like, or like the rest of the Prime kids simply state, do you remember our science fair projects? To which Ratchet's like, okay, look, that's besides the point. I'm just saying here. But this is where Grimlock is actually happy when they actually bring them online. And simply states, all right, Autobots, let's introduce you to Grimlock's newest friends, or our Dinobots. To which Grimlock is like, yay, new friends. And to which Wheeljack's like, okay, we'll be working on his intelligence a little bit later, but look, let him have his fun. And this is where he introduces him to Slash, the Dinobot speed expert, and one of their stealth operators. So she's basically a whole assassin. And then there's Scorn, the warrior, and the Spinosaur of the team, and the aquatically adapted Autobot as well. And so that's where we're going to leave it off here, you guys. Please comment down below, like, and subscribe. And I'll see you guys later for part 3. Peace.